From WisPolitics in Madison, you're listening to Capital Chats.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abigail Levins, and I'm here with another WisPolitics Capital Chats podcast brought to you by Spectrum. I'm here in the office with my colleague Kate Morton to talk about an interview she did with Senator Tammy Baldwin. Kate, could you tell us a little bit about the interview?
Yeah, so we focused a lot on the recent Trump administration actions that have been happening, from federal funding cuts to tariffs. And we also talked a little bit about what she thinks Democrats can do to counter the Trump administration's efforts and kind of try to call out the things they see that they think constituents aren't happy with.
All right, let's give it a listen.
Well, thank you, Senator Baldwin, for joining me on the podcast today.
My pleasure.
Great. Well, to get us started off, there's been a lot of discussion around federal funding cuts, the Department of Government Efficiency led by Elon Musk. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about what you're hearing from your constituents on those things and, any particular areas of concern for you.
Yeah, so let's just start out with the whole premise. We're all for efficiency. We're all for going after fraud, waste, and abuse. That is not what Elon Musk is doing. Elon Musk is basically taking a hatchet to government. And we first saw it with the federal funding freeze. When that occurred, we saw community health centers not be able to pay their workers. We saw Head Starts that had to close operations for several days and send hundreds of families without care. We saw just Elon Musk running roughshod, and why? So that he could find room in the budget to pay for major new tax breaks for billionaires like himself. That was just the first chapter. Following on the footsteps of that was these mass firings. First there was the fork in the road email, then there was all these firing of probationary employees, and now there's the next wave that is being planned and is underway. We are seeing veterans in Wisconsin, and I want to be really clear about this. While you see cuts of federal workers on probationary status nationwide, this is happening in Wisconsin also. And so when veterans showed up for care at the Zablocki VA Medical Center in Milwaukee, they were noticing that veterans who worked there, who used to help care for them and were on their team, were no longer there. And it's having real impacts across Wisconsin. And so we're seeing Elon Musk running roughshod over the services that Wisconsinites expect to get. And he's taking them away, again, so he can pay for new tax breaks for people like himself and his buddies.
Yeah. There's also the aspect of, tariffs are a big question that is going on right now. For China, Canada, Mexico, there were some new ones for Canada announced today. What do you see the outcome of those being on Wisconsin? And I guess what impacts are you seeing already?
Right. Well, I want to begin here as I did to the last question. Look, I think that tariffs, when targeted very specifically, can be a useful tool in our toolbox, especially when we're talking about countries that cheat, that don't have capitalist markets, that put their thumb on the scale to help their own domestic industry. But across the board tariffs on everything with our allies is something altogether different. And I have been hearing from Wisconsin consumers about high prices at the grocery store and what they fear will happen when imports from Mexico and imports from Canada become subject to 25% across the board tariffs. I'm hearing from farmers, particularly dairy farmers, but other farmers also, about what will happen when Canada and Mexico enact retaliatory tariffs, as we know they will. What will happen to their ability to export their products? What will happen to the cost of fertilizer and feed that we often import from other countries, including Canada and our allies? And from manufacturers, especially those Wisconsin manufacturers who have facilities here in Wisconsin, but also maybe a facility in Canada or a facility in Mexico. And when they're producing, say, a component to a larger product in one of those other countries, our trading partners, and then having to pay a tax, a tariff on the way in, it's just going to cost a lot more. And again, why does Elon Musk and Donald Trump say they're doing this? They, for some reason, don't understand how tariffs work, but they think somehow that they're going to create this slush fund that they can use for more tax breaks, new tax breaks for billionaires like Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
All right, another thing that I wanted to ask you about, there has been some criticism within the Democratic Party that, Democrats maybe aren't doing enough to fight Trump administration policies. Do you think that Democrats could be doing a better job of countering the administration?
Look, let us just face reality. We know that Republicans control the House of Representatives, they control the United States Senate, and Donald Trump, a Republican, is president. And so we are seeing the consequences of the elections from last year. That said, I believe that we all do have power, and we have lots of different levers we can use, despite the fact that they own both houses of Congress and the presidency. When they act in a way that's unconstitutional or unlawful, we can go to court. There are certain things that require bipartisan cooperation, particularly in the Senate, in order to advance. And there we can use Congress. But also, we have to remember the people. I think about the last time that we had President Trump in the Oval Office, and he did everything he could to strip away health care from millions of Americans when he tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And people organized, and people worked with Democrats in Congress, and we were able to prevent that from happening. And we're going to have to do that again when it comes to their efforts to wipe out Medicaid or have huge cuts to Medicaid, which pays for a lot of elderly people's long-term care and nursing home care, which pays for almost a third of all children's health care and pays for the health care needed by adults with disabilities. We are going to have to fight back, and we're going to have to do it together. And that involves organizing, and we're going to be doing just that.
Yeah, you brought up the Medicaid issue. There's been a lot of focus on that as well. I know you're focused on healthcare, and there's concerns about Medicaid funding being cut. Republicans keep saying, that that's not going to happen. What's your response to that?
Look, they passed a budget in the House of Representatives last week that would cut close to $1 trillion out of Medicaid. They've given a House committee authority to figure out what aspects of the program they would cut, but there's no way to achieve that dollar figure. I think the exact figure is $880 billion. There's no way to achieve that without deep cuts to Medicaid. And so we know it's coming. They're going to continue to protest and say, no, 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 we're just talking about fraud, waste, and abuse. And if they were only talking about that, I'd be there right with them. But they're talking about something on a scale so large that we're talking about really perhaps threatening the existence of many nursing homes. A majority of seniors in nursing homes have to rely on Medicaid for a safe roof over their head. We're talking about the solvency of rural hospitals, critical access hospitals that serve many patients who rely on Medicaid. If Medicaid dries up, they don't have the margins to keep on operating. And so the ripple effect from these massive cuts, again, to pay for tax cuts, new tax cuts for billionaires, are going to be far reaching. And we have got to organize to fight back against allowing them to let this happen. Elon Musk has not been elected to anything, and he runs an organization that has not been created by Congress. It's just been, blessed by the president. There's no authority here, and we've got to stand up and hold them to account for what they're trying to do.
All right, yeah, thank you, Senator. I think before we wrap things up, I have one more question. You did end up voting to confirm Secretary Sean Duffy to the Department of Transportation. He's a former Wisconsin representative. How do you think he's done in that job as secretary so far?
Like I said, when I introduced him to the committee, um, I think that there are some tremendous advantages to having a person in that role who knows our state, who knows the infrastructure needs of a state like Wisconsin. And in fact, in the House of Representatives, we worked on a couple of major infrastructure projects together. I also said at that same moment that I expect that we were going to disagree, as we had when we were House members together from different parties. And that has happened also. And I have, there have been things that he has said that have been disappointing to me, and I know to others too. But I think that as we look at the serious infrastructure needs of our state, that Sean Duffy will be somebody I can work with. The other thing we talked a lot about in our early meetings when he was nominated by Donald Trump to be transportation secretary was the importance of having Buy America rules in our infrastructure laws. And it's an area on which I agree with both Donald Trump and Sean Duffy, that when we're sourcing components for our bridges, our roads, that we should be supporting U.S. workers and U.S. manufacturers for those components, and not sourcing, Chinese steel or aluminum or what have you for our infrastructure projects. Those should be jobs in the U.S. Those should be tax dollars kept in the U.S.
All right. Well, thank you again, Senator Baldwin,
Thank you.
for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of WisPolitics Capital Chats. If you want to learn more about our U.S. senators from Wisconsin, you can head to our website at wispolitics.com. For now, I'm Abigail Levins.
I'm Kate Morton.
And thanks for listening to WisPolitics Capital Chats, brought to you by Spectrum.